Yes, there's the first question.
I have a question for Mr. Buscher. You are an editor. Do you ever disagree with the opinion of the decision of a reviewer?
As an editor, you mean?
Exactly.
Sometimes I do, but I'm very reluctant with that. Because I approach these people, I select them, and I consider them as experts. And as I said, they spend more time on the manuscript than I can. So I do my utmost best to respect the opinion of the reviewers. Now, having said that, and now I have to be careful, there are certain parts of the world where reviewing scientific papers is not as common as in the West. And those reviewers, if I happen to involve them, I used to neglect from time to time, yes. Yeah?
Okay,
Have I said enough or too much?
No,
Excuse me, I'd like to disagree with that.
Great.
And I recommend those of you on Facebook, there's a place, Reviewer 2 Must Be Stopped. It's a wonderful place where people go and complain about unfair reviews. And I think we need to understand that the peer review process, particularly the pre-publication peer review process, is highly unreliable statistically. And I think as an editor at Close One, I feel the responsibility to protect authors from unfair reviews. And I regularly skewer reviewers anonymously on my blogs when I feel that they are being out of line. And they know who they are. And they probably won't do it again.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, any other questions? Yes.
This is a question not particularly aimed to one of you, but maybe one of you can answer it. What is the incentive for journals to get a higher impact factor? What do they gain from it? I mean, if you have got a journal on a specific topic and you think this is interesting, but it's just a specific niche, then why would you want to get a higher impact factor? Why not just be happy with the impact factor that you have? Is there like a monetary incentive? Do you get more money or whatever? What reason is there behind that goal?
Well, you want to answer it, Rob?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, of course you want to be the best in the field yourself, and with journals it's the same thing. You want to be the best, and one of the quality aspects of a journal is the impact factor, and that's why we try to improve it. And we see that with the journal I'm working on with Henk, College and Services P. It was a mediocre journal, but for this kind of journal, we are now above impact factor 4, and that's quite high in that field. And you see that you get more papers from Western Europe, more papers from the US, more papers from well-established scientists. So once you get it going, it just gets going. The quality gets better and better.
It is. I mean, you want to increase your impact factor basically because you all want to publish in journals with a high impact factor. Mm-hmm. That is your desire. So we want your paper. So that is why we increase our impact factor. If you can get rid of the entire impact factor thing, it would be fine as well. But I mean, that's not possible anymore.
But you also complained about the fact that there are an increasing amount of manuscripts submitted. So if indeed your impact factor goes up, you get more manuscripts, and then that's also something you complained about, and you have to reject more.
No. If I would only get good papers, I would not complain. But it is just so plain clear that the majority of the papers are substandard. Because as I mentioned, a lot of people play pinball with these journals. I think it was in your talk as well. I mean, sometimes you get papers that you have reviewed yourself for the X number of times, and these authors are just too stubborn to start rewriting and improving based on the first submission to a journal. People just neglect these reviewers' reports and submit to another journal. I think that's stupid. That's not the way to do it. If you're lucky to get a set of reviewers' reports, and I think you should use them. And very much in my own group, we have the expression now, you can always fall upwards. I mean, that means don't be disappointed if your paper gets rejected in a journal with an impact factor of 10. Be happy that you have commands, use the commands, and the end result will always be better than you have submitted in the first instance. So you can go higher, you can always fall upwards. But don't just play pinball with these journals. Submit it to one, reject it, submit it to the other, and don't do anything. That's stupid, in my mind.
Yes, a question here. A microphone is coming for you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for all information that we received today. But my question is about what are the benefits and less benefits of MD PhD, doing MD PhD and a promotion?
Well, first of all, the MD PhD program saves you time. Because normally you would have a PhD program, which is about 4 years, and you will have the master program of the medical education. And the MD PhD program is an ambitious program in which you have only 2 years of scientific research and 2 years of the medical education, the masters. So you save 2 years of time, and moreover it is a challenging and also an ambitious project which can help you to get a future job, for example. So it looks good on your CV, and it is really challenging for yourself. So I think when I speak for myself, that it really made me grow, and I think it would have been less if I chose for the standard way and do a PhD after my medical education. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Yes, here.
Yeah, thanks. Just one question. What is the level of confidentiality in the review board you, as an editor, who maintains? I mean, we submit an article. I mean, then the editor sends it to the review board. There are some reviewers you select in the field of same expertise, let's say. They read our article, they know all the informations, which is a brand new information, let's say. And what's the level of confidentiality you expect from them, or is there rules and regulations you follow that they cannot use from, yeah.
Shall I try to answer that?
You go first. I go
Yeah,
first.
okay. Well, of course, well, everybody who participates in the review process as a reviewer should know that it's not about sharing the information and reusing it, you know. So it's one of the pillars of scientific publishing. So helping other researchers to improve their articles and not stealing their data. Of course, it can happen from time to time, just as people do fraud or steal results from others, but these really are a few exceptions.
Yeah, I like to add to that it's not only the position of the author that may be jeopardized, but it's also the position of the reviewer. And this is a personal experience for me that happened over the past month, and I don't know how to deal with it yet. I reviewed a grant. I was approached as an expert in the field. I reviewed the grant, but the grant proposed something that I had already done. It was rejected by 3 journals and it was just published. And then I got the allegation when it was published. You did what I proposed in my grant as an anonymous reviewer. And then I could prove that we already submitted before I ever got the grant to review. And now I'm kind of thinking, do I want to review papers? Because I'm an expert in the field, there's a big chance that what I review as a reviewer is in my mind as well. I can even carry that to my job as an editor. I can get a paper on something that I'm doing myself. And then what? If somebody accuses me of having stolen their ideas. So it's not only the author that is at risk, it's also us as reviewers and editors. Now my case was solved because there was a committee and we were completely cleared. But it's starting to become a very dangerous job.
And I'd like to say, as an editor, that a lot of evil deeds get done in the dark alleyways of anonymous peer review. And the sooner we can make it transparent and get signed reviews and get it all open, the sooner off it'll be better. And in the meantime, we have to identify problems when they arise. There's often great penalties for those who blow the whistle, because you're not only affecting the person you're complaining about, but other people who may be doing similar things who get nervous. It doesn't help you on the job market. I know as the graduate students who blew the whistle on Staple here at Groningen, they made a wise decision to remain anonymous.
Yeah, but I think we should try to find a way to also protect these reviewers. Because it's the same as when you visit a company. You sign a confidentiality agreement that goes both ways. And if you want to make sure that the things you have going on are not claimed by that company, you have to bring them in. So maybe something is needed
Fully
for reviewers
agree.
as well.
Yep, yep.
There's a question here. Oh yeah, it's good.
I've got a question for Rick. You said that you had a database and find out it had a lot of gaps, and you traveled to like 20 hospitals to fill those gaps. I tried to do the same, but yeah, some patients already died, and hospitals don't want to give the information because you don't have the permission. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, thanks for your question. Well, we had the benefit that we worked together with the Comprehensive Cancer Center, the Netherlands, and they have a reputation, a good reputation, so we could benefit from that. So when I said that we were collaborating with the Comprehensive Cancer Center, then that was not a problem anymore. So perhaps that could be a solution for your problem, to find a collaboration with a bigger party.
There's.
I have a question for, I don't know who wants to answer it, but do you have any suggestions for a better acceptance of clinical trials with negative results?
Google Ben Goldacre, and you'll get a wealth of materials, including something called All Trials. And there's an effort to get all the trials out there. PLOS One recently made a decision that our impact factor was too high. We were up around 4.7, and we were going to deliberately lower it by being willing to get all the data out there, and to particularly put a call out for well-described negative trials. They're not failed research. They're trials that give the valuable information that certain things don't work as expected under certain circumstances. And if it's transparently written, it's make it clear, and there's some speculation on the part of the investigator. We think it's very important. We also, a lot of us are involved in this trial registration. I'm involved in really pushing it for psychosocial trials, that you have to register your trial before you start running your first patient. And that way, if you don't publish it, people can find it. And I recently created a lot of controversy with Lancet, where I showed that a group in the UK had changed their registration. They'd registered after they started collecting their data, and they changed it during the process. And they didn't report that in the article. And it led to quite an exchange of letters. So a lot of us are trying to get it all out there. We believe that all data, we have responsibility of the patients that we submit, we put into our studies to make sure it gets out. one of the things that we assure them in their consent forms is that they're contributing to science. And it does no good if it's left in desk drawers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I can make a small comment. I think we all would want a journal of negative results. I mean, that's what we all want. But if we have such a journal, it will be completely overfilled. So what I tend to do with negative results, you should present them in the way that there's something positive to be learned. Just don't conclude that this doesn't work, whether it's a clinical trial or not, but turn it into something positive so that you can really add something to the field other than that doesn't work, because that's just not enough in my opinion.
Now we're hitting on an interesting area of controversy. Some of my best friends, and I can drink beer with them and have a good time with them, but we're on polar opposites. They're trying to create unique opportunities to publish negative results. And I'm opposed to that because that ghettoizes negative results. There are too many journals trying to protect their impact factor by not publishing negative results. And they only want positive. And they present a distorted view of the literature. And we want to get the results published, but we also want the high-impact journals to take responsibility. We have something called the Pottery Barn rule. Pottery Barn is a place you go to buy dishes in the United States. And they really don't have this rule, and they've protested us calling it. But the Pottery Barn rule is if you break something, you have to pay for it. And what we're saying to the high-impact journals, you have to publish failed replications, or we'll boycott you.
That's interesting. There's no question here.
I've got a question for Henk Buscher. As an editor, if you have a paper and you're considering of publishing it, you send it to the anonymous reviewer. Do you send this paper also anonymous?
Do I?
Do you send it anonymous?
Anonymous, no. We send it with the full author's affiliations and things.
Why? Is it fair to do so?
First of all, I think, and I don't know why, but it is the policy of the journal, and I also believe it's Elsevier policy. But maybe we could change that rule. But
do you think
you know, my opinion is, if you are an expert in the field and you see a paper that you're an expert, and you look at the references and you look at the paper,
maybe you should consider to do it double blind.
Sorry?
Maybe you should consider to do it double blind.
Well, what do you mean double blind? I mean,
well, it's anonymous for both parties.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But even if I would review a paper in my field of science, of which I don't know who wrote it, if I read the paper and I see the references and I see the work, then since it is in my particular field, there's an 80% chance that I know who wrote it.
I'd like to suggest, though, that one way to protect you from reviewers who you're concerned about is routinely now you're asked about who should review your paper to suggest reviewers. And I strongly suggest to people to indicate who shouldn't review their papers. And I talked to Chris Gunther, an editor at Nature, about this. And Chris is an ambiguous name in English. You don't know if it's a man or a woman. And she actually got a paper, and it was a paper looking at the effect of estrogen on and the menstrual cycle on female cognitive processes. And the author suggested that women were biased against it because it suggested they were less optimal in their performance, and could she restrict the reviewers to men, and not knowing that she was a woman. But those kind of, obviously you can't introduce broad classes of people, but I, as a reviewer, like to know who has and the polite way of saying it, so-and-so has done work with which my results conflict. It would be the appearance of the conflict of interest were they to review my paper and judge it negatively. However, after a decision is made about the acceptance of or rejection of my paper, I would welcome that person to be invited to comment on it, but keep them out of the review process to avoid conflicts of interest. I appreciate people doing that.
Yeah, I can only add to that, if I have a paper and there are two opposed reviewers that they don't want, then I respect that. Now, it's a different ball game, the paper that I got lately. The guy listed 6 people that he didn't want his work to review. Well, that's a bit like too much. But if people say, well, these 2 people, please don't send it to them, I always respect it.
Are there, Oh, there's one.
The mic. Yeah, once again, thanks for all your interesting presentations. I had a question to either of you. What is your opinion about reviewers who involve their PhD students in the review process?
Well, first of all, if that happens, I don't know, because they don't tell me. I mean, I received the review and I don't know whether it's a PhD student or not. As an editor, I don't involve my PhD students in the review process, so I don't invite them to become a reviewer. Now, the exceptions may be once somebody has published 2 or 3 papers and who knows what a review looks like. And then I sometimes involve them together with other people just to get them into the system. And I think that's important for them because it's part of your scientific training as well to produce good reviews. But I don't do it very often.
Thank you.
I, on the other hand, have set up mentoring programs for some journals where when senior people get a paper to review, they're welcome to respond. It's kept confidential that they have the paper, but they can go back to the journal and say, I don't have time to review this, but I'll gladly mentor and supervise one of my PhD students who will review it. I'll take responsibility. However, after they've done a few, I expect you to contact them directly if you're impressed with the quality. We need more reviewers, and we need people to be socialized. And there's empirical evidence that junior people write better reviews than senior people and put more time into checking things out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Are there any more questions from the audience? Anyone we missed? Oh, okay. Yeah. Please stand. Maybe you're.
I have 2 questions. One is, I want to ask how the editors choose the reviewer. Maybe the question and evaluate the reviewer. Maybe the question is similar as the last question, but because I was being invited as a reviewer for several times from PLOS ONE, and I'm curious about the process because as a PhD student, maybe some of us were involved in this system, and we need to establish our reputation not only by published papers but also by reviewers, the others' papers. So I want to know how the system works and how the editors choose their the reviewers. This is my first question, and the second question is about because most of us are nobody, and if we want to submit a review to a good journal, and how to process to send our review to the editor, because most of the journals will say the review only invited the review only those people invited by the journal, by the editors can submit the review to the journal. So I want to know how to break this layer. And this is my second question. Thank you.
Yeah, PLOS last year involved 400,000 reviewers, and we have 4,000 editors. And what we typically do is we ask authors to suggest reviewers. We may take one of them or 2 of them, but then we next go to the literature, to PubMed or to Google Scholar, and find people who have done similar work. And the other thing we might do is, after we've got some potential candidates, is to see if they're the people who are cited in the paper. Because I'm always skeptical when people recommend reviewers that they don't cite. There must be a reason. Are they friends or whatever? And there are networks out there. So I would go to my advisor if I was a junior person and say, I would love the experience of reviewing. Could you pass them on to me and mentor me? It also becomes an item for your CV. So you say ad hoc reviewer, PLOS ONE, ad hoc reviewer, cell, whatever. And so you do 3 or 4 for each of these. You get a long list of ad hoc reviewing. And it looks good.
It's pretty much the same for me. I usually take 1 or 2 of the suggested reviewers, That means if they're not from the same institute or etc. I make a point of it lately to always choose one of my editorial board members. We have an editorial board of 20, 30 people. So they're committed to the journal through that. And then I do the same thing as you. I go through the list of reviewers or references, or when I know somebody in the field and I choose that one. Now how to break through that ceiling as a junior, that is kind of difficult. And I know from my own expertise when I started, it was just a matter of time. And probably it's the same for you. It was just a matter of time. The moment that people start realizing internationally that you stay in the field and that you stay active in that field, it will also happen on its own. At least that is how it happened with me.
And you can get practice reviewing. You can, as long as one of the 23 million articles on entries on PubMed is yours, then you can go there and publish your commentaries. And you know, it used to be we'd have journal club. How many people have had journal club where you critique papers? It's been shown, empirically shown, to not improve critical skills. However, if people write letters to the editor, it really sharpens. You have to say something succinctly in 600 or 800 words. But no one pays attention to letters to the editor. They do pay attention to PubMed Commons. Anyone can participate. I strongly recommend labs to review each other's entries for PubMed Commons on papers they find there.
Yeah. There are a lot of questions about the peer review process, so I want to add a couple of things. I also do sometimes reviewer workshops. You know, where we teach a bit how to review a paper. We send out a paper beforehand. People that register can review the paper, and in a kind of classical environment, we compare the results. So that's very useful, and after the workshop you can register as a reviewer for an appropriate journal. What we also do is a reviewer recognition program. So the reviews that you do are automatically stored on a website, which you can share with your professor or your dean, you know, to show what you are contributing to science, to your community. And the last thing that I want to mention is that we are experimenting a lot with the peer review process. We have, as a pilot, we have a couple of journals in which we publish, of course, with the consulted agreement of the reviewers, the actual reviewer reports together with the published article. And that gives sometimes very good insights in what were the problems with the articles, how has it been improved, etc. And sometimes these reports from the reviewers are published together with the article anonymously, and sometimes with the names of the reviewers. So there's a lot of things happening in the whole peer review process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for your questions. Before we conclude the symposium, I would first like to thank all of our speakers. Volkert Kuipers, I would like to thank. He is not here anymore, and Peter de Jonge is also unfortunately not here anymore. But the rest also would like to thank, starting there, James Coyne. Thank you very much. Guus van den Brekel, thank you very much. Henk Buscher, thank you very much. Rick Pleihuis, thank you very much. And Rob van Dalen, thank you very much. I would also like to take the chance to thank the organizers of the symposium from the Central Medical Library. If you are present, please stand. Annelies Koolstra, head of the Central Medical Library. Sjoukje van der Werf, unfortunately she's in Oxford at the moment. Marianne Penning. Karin Seidsma and Els Kloons. Lastly, I would like to thank Elsevier for their participation in the symposium and also for sponsoring the drinks. Oh.
I want to thank Jitka, of course, for being a chairwoman today. So,
thank you. Thank you very much.
Misschien kan je nog even iets over de filmpjes zeggen.
Okay. I also want to say for those of your colleagues who haven't been able to attend today, the presentations will be online. There will be a newsletter sent from the CMB, so you can see all the presentations, and the whole session has been filmed today, so you can look at it later. That concludes our symposium on how to write a world-class paper. We hope you were inspired by our speakers, and we hope you enjoyed it.